Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, and today I'm joined by Kristi Piehl. Kristi is founder and CEO of Media Minefield. She's also the author of Flip Your Script and communications strategist known for elevating brands and leaders to share their stories. Kristi, welcome to Leadership Matters.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. I want to start with kind of a weird question.
Love it.
What'd you want to be when you grew up?
I actually know the answer to this, and it's not because you told me in advance. My mother had a book that was, every year, kindergarten with the picture and some little mementos. And so I still have that book. And I think it was second or third grade, the question I started to write out, what did I want to be when I grew up? And it was a question that was asked every year in elementary school in this little book. And it was flight attendant, actor. Those were the two things, actress.
You're kidding me.
Because I think at that time, I didn't know any women in business. It was the 80s when I was writing this down. And TV reporter wasn't a dream I had until I was probably 12, which was early, relatively speaking. So I knew that I wanted to be with people and help people, I think is the flight attendant. I love to travel, so that seed was there. And being in front of people never scared me. So I think the actress sort of was right there. In fact, the way that I wrote it in second grade was movie star, and then it turned into actress. So I think at some point I realized that was a more appropriate way of saying be in films or TV.
And then pretty quickly you got to TV reporter by the age of 12.
Yes, I was watching someone on Channel 5, the KSTP in the Twin Cities, Cindy Bricado, if people are familiar. And I was watching her and I remember saying, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And the crazy thing about that, which is how wild the world is, my very first live shot, when I finally achieved the dream to get back to the Twin Cities to do television news, was with Cindy Bricado. I was out live covering a story, and she pitched it to me, and now live in the field, Kristi Piehl, whatever. And I remember thinking I'm sort of Star Trek. I can't believe this is happening. You have to speak. So that was a full circle moment for me. And then she was one of the people that helped throw a baby shower for my son. So it really, very few people I think can say, I had this dream and it worked out. However, it worked out until it didn't.
Yeah. So talk to us about until it didn't.
I had a wonderful 12-year television career. My goal was to win Emmys. I did that. I worked with some fantastic people. Traveled across the country. I did a story in Mexico at one point. Did some work for Good Morning America. My career was at the high. And my agent was negotiating my next contract. I was an investigative reporter. Everything was just swimming along, as long as I myself didn't want to look under the surface. So externally, I was like, well, this is what I wanted to do. Look, I'm doing all these things. And just fortuitously, there was an image that was in a magazine in town in the Twin Cities that I have on my desk as a reminder. And it's me holding an Emmy at the awards. And that was the same month that I walked into a boardroom with HR, my boss, lawyer. There was a box of tissues in the middle of the table and envelopes, manila envelopes. And I was laid off. I was one of 20 people who lost their jobs. My entire department was laid off. And I knew two things by the time I got to the parking lot. Well, three things by the time I got to the parking lot. One, I wasn't going to go out quietly, not because I was upset at my bosses. I wasn't. I knew enough about business to understand that there are times in any company's life cycle where hard decisions have to be made. And I knew when I was an investigative reporter, that's expensive work. You're paying people a lot of money and a lot of people to put work out that maybe they're only producing 15 minutes of television a month. That just the economics are difficult. So I knew that. I knew that I was really grateful that I had this opportunity to do something else, though terrified because I had no idea what that something else would be. And I really wanted to, when I talked about it, I wasn't going to go quietly. It was because there were a lot of people who also lost their jobs who were not in front of the camera. I knew that it would be much easier for me to do my next thing as opposed to someone who was nameless and faceless in a tough economy. This was in 2008, 2009, early 2009. So those were sort of the things that I was thinking of. And I also knew that I wasn't going to move. My husband and I had moved around the country. At that time, we had 2 small children. So I had a few things that I was quite clear about immediately.
Take us back to that moment. What was your initial reaction?
It was one of the first times in my life where I had 2 very powerful feelings at the same time. And the 2 powerful feelings were grateful. I got to live my dream. I got to meet presidents and cover important stories and have a front row seat for just incredible events. So I was so grateful that I had the opportunity. I also was scared out of my mind. I had no idea what I was going to do next. And those 2 things were visceral and alive. And after I got in the car, I, called my husband, called my parents, made a few phone calls. I drove, looking back, it's so funny. I just did a social media post about this not that long ago. I drove to Barnes & Noble, which is like books are safe for me. And I love bookstores. I love libraries. So I drove to Barnes & Noble and I went into the bathroom and I cried my eyes out.
Wow.
And then I got it together and I went out and bought myself a coffee and started figuring out what I was going to do. So there's a lot packed into that, but I knew that it was a good thing and a hard thing at the same time.
Yeah. How did you move through that season, Kristi?
With a lot of help and a lot of faith and a lot of soul searching. It was hard work. It would have been much easier to go get another job. And I had job offers. I had done the work publicly. I had job offers in town. I had job offers out of town. But I knew that I didn't want to do television news anymore in the same way that I had been doing it. I knew that I tried to stay home with my kids, actually. I thought, they're little. I'm going to stay home with them for a while. And my husband had been successful and always made more money than I did. And he never said anything about me not working. And I was taking unemployment because I was spending that time looking for, other things, doing some exploratory things and volunteering and that sort of thing. And I remember at one moment thinking, I hate not working. This is not for me. And it isn't because I judge people who choose to stay home, men or women. Good on you. It just wasn't for me. I love my children. I love the ability to be with them, and starting my own business gave me the opportunity to be very flexible. And I didn't go back full time to work for several years until the youngest one was in kindergarten. I just was like, gosh, I like having my own thing. I like using my brain in different ways. That surprised me. That was one of the most surprising things because I just realized, gosh, for me, I want to do something.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was. So I remember at one point, about a year in, writing down my non-negotiables. Okay, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next. What are my non-negotiables? I'm not going to move. I am no longer going to miss holidays and birthdays. And there were some things that I had to miss when I was in TV news. A tornado came before my kid's birthday. It just, it would. The bridge collapsing came before what was happening at home. And I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I also knew that public relations, a very natural path for many former journalists go into public relations in some fashion. I thought the industry was flawed. Many businesses spend a lot of money on PR. I interfaced with them as a journalist, all the different places that I worked, and I just didn't think they were effective for their clients. So I sort of had these things that were like, gosh, I don't want to do PR. I do want to have flexibility. I do want to be able to be there for my kids, and I want to do something of meaning and to help others. The to help others was so crystal clear for me because in television news, especially where my career kind of ended and the stories I was telling, there were times where I felt like I was ruining people's lives. And that was a tension that I didn't like. And I was asked to do things that I wasn't comfortable with ethically, where I would say, I'm not knocking on that person's door. I'm not going to disrupt this family at this difficult time. I'm not comfortable doing these things. So I spent quite a bit of time and it was hard. I mean, I remember being on my knees in my kitchen crying. I remember journaling. And at one point in my journal, because I've gone back and looked, uh, Jesus, bring the rain, just give me an umbrella. So it was hard. And to think it wasn't hard, it was hard. And the only way through that and the only reason that what I've done since has been successful is because I did that inner work. I did the struggle. It was a struggle. It was a daily struggle. And it was fantastic. I was at the Arboretum with my kids almost every day with a notebook, writing writing ideas down.
Yeah. It sounds like such a season of self-discovery for you.
100%. And I encourage folks newer in their career to do this all the time. I was forced to do it. I wish I would have done it. My television news persona became something that I didn't want, but didn't know how to step away from.
Yeah.
And it became such a part of my identity.
Yeah.
I was that before I was other things, and that isn't what I never got into it for that. I got into it to tell people stories, and I love telling people stories. So it got a little bit out of hand, and so I took the self-discovery part was like, who am I without that? Which was really, really important. And I also was able to spend the time now I'm in my mid-30s. I have 2 children. We've decided we're staying in the Minneapolis area. What do I want to be when I grow up is a really different question to ask then than when I was 20, saying, I'm going to be a TV reporter and we'll move all over the country and I'll drop everything. So had I not lost my job, I would have continued to let the job dictate the life. And at 35, I was able to let the life dictate the job.
Wow.
And that was a really important distinction that I would not have been brave enough to get to had I not lost my job.
What a gift in retrospect.
It was. And that's the piece that I think I knew right away. This is a gift.
Yeah.
It just is a painful one.
So you're discovering things you don't want to do. You don't want to be a TV reporter anymore. You're not thinking about accepting a PR role. How did you get to clarity around launching Media Minefield?
The part that became very clear to me was use your gifts to help other people. And I didn't know what that looked like at all. So I was in this phase of thinking about what would that mean? And I was volunteering at organizations, volunteering at my church. I took a very part-time role at my church, like 6 hours a week, helping them with communications because my kids they would go to spend 6 hours with someone else so that I could have a little bit of break, and I wanted to go do something with that time during the summer. So that's what I was doing. And I took a class at my church, and the class was about using your passion and your gifting and your experience to help other people. And during this class, and I have all of the paperwork, all the workbook, the question was asked, what do you know so well you could teach someone else? And my answer, and I have it written down, news. I know news. I know how to craft a story. I know how to tell people's story, and I know how to do it to move to action. So that was what I wanted to do to help other people. And right after I wrote down news, it was like a bolt of lightning in that basement church cinder block room. Here's the company. Here's what it's going to be named. Here's what you're going to do. I picked up the kids from the childcare in the church, and my husband was in New York working at the time, and I called him. And right in front of the church and said, I'm starting a company. It's going to be Media Minefield. Here's what we're going to do. And he said, great. And had he not said great, I think the story would be different. And the people around me were very encouraging, the people who I told. And the vision that I had for the business was never what Media Minefield is. Had I gotten that vision, I think I would have been too afraid to do it.
Really?
It was me by myself figuring out public relations and doing it differently because I started from this place of I don't like how it currently is working. I want to disrupt this.
Yeah.
Well, the arrogance of I'm going to disrupt it alone. Pretty silly. But had I walked into our current office and looked at my setup and met the people who are in the office now and how talented they are and the clients that we have who are some of them household names and the stories we've been able to shape, had I known that that's where it would go, I would have said like, no, thanks. I'm not equipped. English major, journalist, like not equipped.
Yeah.
I did go back and get more education and I've learned a lot along the way, but I'm glad that the vision wasn't start a company that employs dozens and dozens of people that has revenue in the millions and millions of dollars. I wasn't equipped.
It's amazing who we become on the path.
Yes.
Talk about who you are today compared to who you were then when you first came up with this early vision of Media Minefield.
Older and wiser.
What a succinct way to say it.
Like Yoda now.
A lot of experience.
And a lot of mistakes, certainly. A lot of heartache. A lot of success as defined by the world. And mostly gratitude that this idea turned into something that can hopefully outlive me and has impacted many families. And it's just been such a gift. And it's very difficult also.
Yeah.
Difficult in ways that I wasn't expecting, of course. And just, I feel very, very fortunate.
Tell us the story behind the name Media Minefield.
I have always talked about the media being a minefield. And when I saw PR done poorly, when it relates to news, media interviews, which now would encompass podcasts and niche media and all sorts of other things, and this was before social media in the way that we think about it today, if you don't know what you're doing and you try to take on news interviews or high-profile media or even niche media and you aren't prepared, you can damage your reputation, you could damage your business, so it can explode. And I've seen that happen. I've interviewed people who were not prepared and we put on the news what they said and it did them damage. No fault of mine, but there are folks who have said some really unfortunate things that got them into some trouble. And we all, I think, can think of stories of that one CEO or that one time or whatever it might be, but it can be a minefield and people need a guide. So I believe deeply in the power of storytelling and media to extend the reach. And without some trained, skilled guides who can coach and position and put in front of the right people the story for action, it can be so powerful. And now we do quite a bit of crisis work. So that media minefield concept is certainly true, that we want to mitigate the blast that can happen when companies and leaders are in crisis. We do a lot of training now in all parts of our business to make sure that people understand how they can navigate the minefield that is social media, that is earned media, that is owned media, that all the different types of media. So it was very ideal in the naming and it came very organically and very early. And thank goodness I didn't think about it very much. I think, again, I would have been a little paralyzed. Like someday this will be on the wall.
Yeah, right. We'll have a big logo on this.
I didn't think that. In fact, I needed some convincing even to do a website.
Really?
And business cards. It was just going to be me.
Yep.
So I didn't think any of that was necessary.
So when did some of this start to open up to, wow, this could really be something here?
So I started the company with a position that public relations as an industry is flawed. And that meant that, okay, there isn't a book that I can go read about this. There isn't online research I can do. So I better figure out how to do it better. So the first year I spent by myself creating processes, creating frameworks, which many of them we use today. They've certainly been upgraded as I've had a lot of really smart people come along and make them better. And we've had 15 years of experience. So it was, okay, if this is what I think good is, how do I create a process and that can be replicated
Mm.
so that other people can benefit from this experience that I have?
Mm.
So that was the first year.
Mm.
And initially, I really was only planning on helping nonprofits.
Wow.
It was um, the initial tagline and all of it was designed about helping nonprofits
Interesting.
because they have such great stories.
Yeah.
And then I realized that nonprofits also have boards, and boards can be lots of opinions and not a lot of money. And so we have a passion for working with nonprofits, and working only with nonprofits I found was made it tough to make payroll. So we within about, a year expanded into for profit as well. So that was the first year was figuring out how to create the process and how to prove out that my belief that it could be done better and more
Mhm.
effectively, that was true. So that was year 1.
Have there been seasons throughout your 16 now years of operating where you've wondered about the future, or should I just throw in the towel? Is this worthwhile?
Yes. Yes. There are seasons, especially in my industry. I get offers
Mm.
for people to buy the business regularly. And there are times where, gosh, it would be easier to say, peace out. But I don't think that this was given to me to take an easy path.
Mm.
And I still have a lot of passion. I still am really excited about what I'm doing. But I ask myself, because as owner and leader, is the leader still the best person to
Mm.
fulfill what the owner wants
Mhm.
also? So I do have these kind of there's a tension certainly, and I like a challenge, and it continues to feel like a challenge, and I love to create and I love to innovate, and I think that's some of the things that make me really unique.
Yeah.
And considering that social media and AI and GEO and REO and all these things are new, it just gives me more opportunities to
Mm.
shape the business and to get through the difficult seasons, because it's we in one time in our history did layoffs, which is unusual for a PR firms because many of them are kind of that's part of the regular cadence. And that was very difficult.
Mm.
That was a time where I thought, gosh, is it me? Am I the right person to lead if this is where we are?
Hmm.
And there have been other times. COVID was challenging. And then I think, well, if not me, who?
Mm.
But this vision happened, and I'm grateful that I get to, at this point, be the person sitting in my office.
You talked about your passion for guiding people through this challenging landscape. I know you do coaching with your clients to help them navigate things. What role has coaching played in your own life, Kristi?
I am such a belief in lifelong learning, and an excellent coach is someone who teaches and who can listen to someone else's journey and point out the nuggets that they may miss. And that's what coaches have done for me. And
Mm.
coaches have shown up in from formal coaching to formal mentoring to the person who you have coffee with who says something that is exactly what I need at this minute. But for me, coaching is all about having a mindset of learning and a
Mm.
posture that you don't have all the answers.
Have there been some significant perspective shifts that have happened as a result of being in some of these relationships?
Significantly. It's hard to go back and pick one or two. I think some of it for me, especially in the early days, now I think it's more about tactics and
Mm.
best practices and those types of things. But in the early days, the business was able to grow because people were speaking into me and saying, I believe in you.
Mm.
You can do this. You are the right person to do this. Don't let the voices that say you have only an English major, you've only been a journalist,
Mhm.
you can do it. And you're the right person to do it. And sometimes that was enough.
Mm. Wow. So switching gears a little bit here, you partner with clients to really help them share more of their stories as individuals, as executives, as brands. What have you seen that most of us get wrong about the world of interacting with the public and the marketplace on a whole?
Most leaders and most brands miss the opportunity for the C-level or the leaders to be authentic human beings as opposed to just a voice of the brand. And to leaders can't just amplify the brand voice. Leaders have their own perspectives, they have their own experience, and many brands miss opportunities to leverage and elevate the leaders. And currently, in the realm of social media and thinking about AI and so many people using AI to search, and that only growing, the employees. In any organization, the employees should be viewed as influencers.
Mm.
And what employees are saying on social media is critically valuable, and for many leaders and brands, it's frightening.
Mm.
And it's so important to think of leaders as influencers, executive influencers, and employees as influencers, and to put energy, marketing dollars, energy into those folks and allowing them to show up as human beings, whether it's in interviews or whether it's thinking about that in a training or coaching perspective or on social media. All of those things really matter. And most brands put the bulk of their marketing dollars towards the brand and not towards the people, and they're missing out.
Why do you think it is so tempting to overlook the people behind the brand?
It's scary.
Hmm.
Many people, especially in a large organization, who are responsible for the brand or communications are typically people 1, 2, 3, 4 decades younger with less experience than the C-suite. So how is the C-suite supposed to trust that there's that balance? There's also, how does someone who is newer in their career show up 3 levels above them and say, "Hey, I think you should be doing this." Like that still isn't, there are not a lot of pathways to allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also fear. Gosh, to put the leaders out there, there's fear about whether it's being canceled or having enough time or not being interesting enough. And with employees, there's also a lot of fear. I do a lot of speaking and a lot of training with C-level leaders, and every room I'm in, if there's an opportunity for people to ask questions or interact, they bring up Glassdoor and they
Mm-hmm.
bring up, this one employee at this one time said this, and they get very emotional and very upset about it. And I encourage them to reframe that, which is what Flip Your Script, the book is, reframing how you think about a story and leaders and employees and what they bring. Because in any company, it doesn't matter what you're making or what you're doing, it's the people in the brand that are the heart and soul of it. And that's what is connecting with customers and future employees and stakeholders and investors. So why are we missing out on the lifeblood that they bring to a business?
How does AI impact all of this? You just talked about the lifeblood of the humans behind the business. I'd love your take on how AI is disrupting some of these things.
AI initially was so scary. And for many people it still is. I don't want to discount that. What is happening that I love about AI is I love how it is positioning and rewarding authentic, organic content. So if someone is going to go into, whether it's Perplexity or Claude or ChatGPT, or fill in your search option of choice, and you search a business or a person, it is pulling from and bringing up content that is authentic, that is organic, that it can be verified, can be, whether it's coming from an earned media citation or a website copy or LinkedIn, which is the number 2 most cited on ChatGPT. So these organic, social, that content is being rewarded. Niche media is being rewarded. And so I love that. I love that people can't buy their way or advertise their way or pay some celebrity influencer their way to the top of a search. I love that you have to earn it. That just feels very important to me. So for that reason, I love what AI is doing. And it's great for my business, which I didn't initially
Mm.
consider, but because we play in the space of leadership social media and we have trademark services. We've been doing this before kind of anyone else was doing it. And we've got so many stories of success around it that it's been great for my business, but it has absolutely transformed it.
How so? How has it transformed your business, Kristi?
We think about, and I've always thought about PR as being an opportunity to solve business problems. So if you think about whatever the business problem is, how does PR fit into that? How can PR offer a solution that other options can't? So if we think about PR solving a business problem, business problems often have some kind of component that people are searching or investigating or relying on: social media, some kind of search option. So if it's how we're struggling to hire, okay,
Mm.
well then what messages can we put out and how can we leverage stories so that the perfect right next hire sees it and says, "Yeah, I want to work there." Or we aren't getting enough people to our website. Okay, well what can we do to get more people to the website? Or I'm in the middle of this terrible crisis because someone said something or someone stole something or we're getting sued. What do we do with that? In all of those problems, or even not enough people know about my brand, which is a very common problem, or I'm a thought leader. Why is my competitor getting more publicity than me? All of those problems that we see, different solutions must include news, must include thought leadership articles, must include social media. There's all these components that we do that work together now in combination. So we have more tools in our tool belt
Mhm.
to help our clients solve their problems.
Mm.
So that's why I am excited about AI and where it's going.
What are the challenges keeping you up at night, Kristi?
One of the things that I've learned as I've aged is sleep is so important. So I really try not to wake up in the middle of the night to go through problems. If I do, and in 2025, I did a lot of up in the middle of the night solving problems, and we can talk about that if you want to, but on the personal side, I do one of two things, and both of them work really effectively for me. The first thing is I start at 100 and I name specific blessings in my life backwards.
Wow.
100, 99, 98, and I've never made it past the 50s.
Wow.
So that it just changes my kind of brain power.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I do is I get up and I write because so much of what comes to me in the middle of the night are ideas. And it's more effective for me to wake up and to document them and then get back into bed than sit there and like, I got to remember blah, blah, blah.
Talk about those challenges keeping you up at night in a previous season.
Can 2025 in January, early January, my son, who was a high school senior at the time, we were on vacation. He had a pain in his upper leg. By the time we got home, and within a week, he was diagnosed with a rare kind of cancer called Ewing sarcoma. And it presented as a soft tumor, which is unusual for that kind of cancer as well. And he was at that point a football recruit. Knew where he was going to college. He had, I mean, senior spring, right? It's prom and graduation and all of these kind of final things, and all of that in with 30 seconds of a doctor walking in and saying that thing that we thought was an infection, an abscess, that was a tumor, and we're going to be treating you for cancer, and here's the path you're on. So within a very quick amount of time, our life erupted, and I had to I had to reframe all the priorities of my life. And you get really clear really quickly in a crisis like that. What do I have to do? What is most important? Who can help me? And we've never been through a season of that magnitude, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And he now, more than a year later, just finished his first semester of college. He's healthy. He is at Bethel University. It has a great football program. He's on the football team. He's thriving. He's cancer free. It's fantastic. And it has allowed me to discover new things about myself, my family, the people around me, and I'm writing in different ways. I put the book out at the end of 25, and now I'm writing different things, and I've just recently hired to keynote and speak about some of these personal challenges, because what works to get someone through a challenge, whether it's laying people off or being laid off or working with a child in a caretaking cancer diagnosis and recovery and healing process, the same inner qualities must be tapped into in all of them, just at different levels. You turn the volume up on the childhood cancer diagnosis. So a lot of folks have asked, how did you do that? And whether it's how did you do that with Alec, my son, or how did you do that with the business, or like we're talking about now. And I've realized now at 50 that, gosh, I have an opportunity to share the stories of my own to help other people. So it's taking that camera and flipping it around, which most people who get into television news, the good ones anyway, I'd argue, don't do it to be on TV. They do it to share stories. And public relations, I've been really focused on other people's stories. And now it's, okay, we lived through this thing and I have this powerful story. What am I going to do with it? And I'm wired to be a storyteller. I have been a CEO now for 15 years. And my friend always teases me like, man, you're just CEOing that cancer. And it sort of was like, okay, what are we going to do today? Here, what's the outcome? And I think the doctors were a little nervous when I walked in with my son instead of my husband, because I have my binder, and man, we were tackling that just like you have to tackle any problem, like one step at a time.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely a very difficult season. And if my son were here, and he said this publicly, and he's going to have more opportunities to share his story as well in other venues, because he feels very strongly that he needs to share it as well. But he would tell you that it was a gift, and he's grateful it happened. Now, he would not wish it on anyone. I would not wish it on anyone.
Yeah.
And we got very early in the process, a former professional football player who had a very similar diagnosis, I reached out to via social media. And because of my network, he reached back out and he talked to Alec, and they still text. And he told Alec, like, someday you're going to say that was for the best.
How did that gift most significantly change the fabric of who you are, Kristi?
You know, it intensified qualities that I already had. It reframed relationships. There are people who were very important in my life before the diagnosis who are no longer in my life. There are times that's happened with work in the last, 6 months where there's a challenge, a significant challenge, or something personally that's a significant challenge. And I think, we got through cancer. This is no big deal. And if the business goes away, my family is healthy and happy. I'll figure it out. And I didn't have that confidence. I also think I would have probably sold the business and left it earlier than I'm planning on now, which is I don't have that sort of plan, because I know that because I do this work, I have the ability to help people. And once I quit the work, I no longer will have a seat at some tables. So there's a relevance that I love about the work. And again, I love the work. And being away from it for a year just made me realize like how grateful I am to have the work. And I just wake up in the morning and like, man, I get to go to work. I never have the days anymore like, oh, I have to go do this. I have to do that. Like, no, I built my life. I get to do this. How lucky that I'm not sitting in a hospital room, because there's a lot of parents who do, and we met many of them.
What's a perspective you would have valued hearing early on in that journey from someone where you're sitting now who had lived through it?
I figured this out on my own. And when I told our physician, who we adore, Alec was treated at Children's of Minnesota and at Mayo. And I told a physician in both locations because I wanted to validate that what I was feeling was accurate. And they both said, yes, you're totally right on. And I thought, why didn't you tell me before? But everyone has to uncover things on their own sometimes. There's a lot of, I call it now the cancer mom rabbit holes. There's a lot of angry, bitter, difficult, hateful, I would say, moms of kids who have gone through a cancer journey who really, really struggle. And those seem to be the loudest voices. There's a lot of depression and really strife in people's life after the kid gets healthy. That's a pretty normal thing. And so when I started to search about other people's journeys, I found so much anger and bitterness. And that wasn't where I was. Certainly, I wasn't grateful for the diagnosis, but there's always something to be grateful for. Grateful that we live close enough that I can drive to Mayo, close enough, grateful that I have flexible work, grateful I have insurance. So there's all these things to be grateful for in anything. And there's a lot of folks out there on social media who couldn't find anything to be grateful for. And that is sad, and my heart breaks for them. But having those voices in my head wasn't helpful. And so at the beginning, when Alec was diagnosed, I had signed up for, follow this person, get into this group. And there was so much negativity. I was struggling with all of it. And many of the children who pass away from similar kinds of cancer, those folks are out there and they're loud, and some of them are angry loud, and some of them are, gosh, this is a horrible thing, and I want to do good by my kid's legacy to help other people. And some of them don't ever want to talk about it. And far be it from me to judge how other people deal with this horrible thing, but I can control what voices are in my head. And that was the thing that when I said to the doctors, like, is it okay if I unfollow all of this? And they're like, yes, go ahead. I said, gosh, there's a lot of really dark places and things out there. And they said, yeah, do what works for you. And I think that's the advice that I would give to someone else. You're on a path that, yes, other people have been on it, but do what works for you and seek out the voices that make it easier for you, not more difficult.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And I just really appreciate the emphasis on control what you can control, because there's so much outside of your control. But often there's more inside of your control than you really realize.
Absolutely. And asking people for help and bringing in a community of people to surround you and being clear with them about what you need and what you don't need, and turning off the voices that are not helpful, and being really focused on what you can control, and waking up in the morning. And gosh, if we walk a block today because that's all that he can do, that's great. But it's much more effective than sitting in the house. So it is what's the next right step?
And I just hear this theme of gratitude being such a grounding force in your life. And I really appreciate that perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you for such a rich conversation, Kristi. It's been a pleasure getting to know more about you and your journey.
Thank you for the invitation and for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to our listeners. Join us next week for another episode of Leadership Matters.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.